So what is consistency? So people struggle with consistency. So let's just put some ideas here about what consistency is.
I think in probabilities from the market's perspective. So that was last session.
Yeah. Because you can't think in terms of certainty in individual events, right? So you're thinking in probabilities.
Believing that anything can happen.
With every bit of who you are.
Completely accepting the risk of realizing the 4 primary fears.
So that you totally and utterly accept, like we spoke in the last session there, that you're going to lose, you're going to be wrong, you're going to miss out, and you are going to leave money on the table. And they're just a natural part of this game, of this infinite game of trading the stock market.
Not knowing. So focus on the process, not on the outcome.
And this is believing with every bit of who we are that we don't need to know. We don't need to know. And just the process, and we know there's a random distribution.
Doing a defined process right over and over again.
And this is probably the essence of consistency, is that you're doing any defined process, but it has to be defined. And the right comes with the process, because the process gives you the definition of what is right and wrong, and whether losing is okay or not, and to what degree. And you just keep on doing this over and over again. And we put a definition up, I think a couple of sessions ago, out of the beginning of Mark Douglas's book, and he says you just keep on executing the edge over and over and over again. And that's really what consistency is. It's not about being perfect, it's not about being right. And even though we understand that at a rational level with our cognitive brains, the actual thing that's doing our bidding are our beliefs in our unconscious mind, our subconscious mind. And until we address that, we are going to have all the rights and wrongs and losing and everything defined in the wrong way according to what our truth is, which is our beliefs. Yeah. So just have to put those at the beginning so you can know what it is we are trying to fix here. And he gives the example in the book, I think it's page 143, of this free money back in, I think, 1987. He was watching TV, and I've searched high and low for that. But I found this little clip, which is only a minute long, and it was done more recently in Chicago, and free money, where this guy walked around, asked me for $5 and it's yours. And you just, for a minute, you see people walking past, and a few people go up and take the $5 and run off with a bit of elation. Look, I got $5. And you can go and do the search on YouTube for it yourself. But the thing that came out of this is that 2,879 people passed by and only 52 took the offer. 52 took the offer. And Mark talks about what was going on in there. Now, 52 is only 1.8% of the people, which is tiny, right? So what was going on here? And Mark talks about the free money, it doesn't exist. This is the belief, right? So inside, we all have been programmed to believe that there's no such thing as free money, right? Now, maybe not all of us. The environment says, hang on, free money does exist. So it's coming in from the outside. Our knowing that free money doesn't exist gets us to act in a way that just gets us to walk past and ignore. And in fact, this conflict, rather than perceiving with an open mind, a neutral mindset, what's happening in the environment, it causes conflict with an existing belief that's inside us. The decision goes with the belief because it has more energy than this new bit of information that's hit us from the outside, and we resolve it. Man must be crazy, there's danger, potentially be pain. And some people don't even carry on walking straight. They actually take a wide berth. So their pain avoidance mechanisms probably got more energy in it than some of the others. And who are the 1.8%, do you think?
The people who've got an open mind. They think, well, people who don't have that conflict in their mind, they're making themselves available to that opportunity. Absolutely. At the moment.
Yeah, so they're seeing it from the markets, from the environment's perspective, the environment saying, hey, there's free money here. It could also be somebody who has a belief that free money does exist. And there'll be people in our population, there might be beggars, or even people that don't work and get income, right? They don't do anything for it, and they get income. So free money does exist. There's no exertion for it. There's nothing I have to do. So there are people in the population that do have that. And now they are just perceiving the environment for what it's saying, because free money does exist. But it goes down to where our beliefs are and which way the cause and effect is flowing. So Mark talks about how do you suspend your beliefs? And you do this by asking the question, what if? What if? And the moment you say, what if, you immediately open your mind up to other possibilities, and you swap the cause and effect relationship around. And rather than you exerting and being a force on the environment, you allow the environment to be a force that exerts on you, and you open your mind up to other possibilities. So to be in this what if frame of mind is goes along with anything can happen. What if? And if you keep on saying those to yourself, and every time you are presented with your belief exerting itself on the environment, you catch yourself and become aware in the moment. What if? Anything can happen. What if this happens, which is and then throw it to you that it's the exact opposite of what you are thinking is going to happen. And say, what if the opposite? Or what if something happens, but it's not what I've got projected in my head? Mark talks about this quote unquote, that when people have imagine somebody who got the money and said, runs back to the office and say, or they don't get the money, they just walk straight past. You won't believe what happened to me. And we say that all the time. You won't believe. Right? So we don't stop and think about what we're saying, but it's powerful stuff. It's all the time. How many times do you find yourself saying, that's unbelievable? To somebody else, it's not. But to you, it is. Why is it? And it's your beliefs acting out on the environment. So you want to get to a point. Now, this is made in chapter 8. You would have seen this. And this is just Mark in the Pathway to Consistency workshop, just summarizing, if you like, what's in chapter 8. It says, get to a point where you trade from a carefree, not a careless, but a carefree, objective state of mind. Not subjective. Objective means defined. And you can, in an instant, unambiguously know on off which is right and which is wrong, what path to take, what action to do, how to think. Objective state of mind. Where you're making yourself available, and we covered that in some detail in the previous session, and perceive and act upon whatever the market is offering you, whatever the environment is offering you in any given now moment, which means that you flip to making yourself open and making yourself available to the market, well, then you haven't got your beliefs exerting on as a force going out. You're still open to the cause coming from the environment, from its perspective.
Yeah. So those two in particular, though, they really relate to not just that anything can happen, but also I don't need to know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And even if you do know, how do you flip that? I don't need to know what's going to happen next in the market in order to make money. And so this is where we said you got to repeat the 5 fundamental truths, and you can repeat them before you do a trade, to buy or sell, or any time you like. But especially when you catch yourself thinking, feeling, saying, or doing something that is a dysfunctional belief. And we're going to get on to how you identify what your dysfunctional beliefs are in a moment.
So all you need to expect is that over a series of events, you have the odds in your favor.
That alone, and that's Mark putting in his own words. You won't find that phrase in Trading in the Zone book. But if you just say, all I need to expect is that over a series of events, I have the odds in my favor, and you energize that belief. And by doing that, you're de-energizing a whole bunch of dysfunctional beliefs, which you don't need to know what they are. But because this kind of gazumps them, it overrides them. So what it resolves are...
Okay, so 2 conflicting beliefs at the micro and macro level.
So the micro is the individual trade level, and the macro is a large sample of events or trades.
Not knowing for each individual event.
That gets resolved because we are thinking over a large series of events, the odds in our favor. So you break this connection of not having to know.
Yeah. Making yourself available by thinking in probabilities.
I've got the odds in my favor. I haven't got certainty in my favor.
And fear of losing and drawdown.
Overcomes those, right? Because you got the odds in your favor.
Yeah.
So if you got it in your favor, that's positive. That's positively charged. It's not this losing and drawdown. I know that's going to happen because I'm thinking in probabilities, not thinking in certainties.
Yeah, and it's not a finite game, is it? It's that
keeps on going.
Game.
Absolutely,
on going. Yeah. And associating and predicting with analysis. So I don't have to keep continuing to do that because I'm resolving those conflicts.
Correct. I've got my edge, which is my flow. I've got the odds in my favor comes from my edge. It gets me into the flow of the market, associating with the past. So if you're looking at analysis and you see a chart that's got a pattern in it, you go, oh, this pattern happened like this in the past. Well, it did. And you won't find a pattern that works 100% of the time or doesn't work or 100% of the time, i.e. ends up a profit trade or a loss trade. And nor will analysis about predicting as well. It's just purely about probabilities.
Any belief that prevents these is a self-sabotaging belief.
Correct. And so self-sabotaging, dysfunctional belief with respect to what we're trying to achieve.
The strongest self-sabotaging belief that defends itself
is,
I know what will happen.
And where does the I know come from?
Previously held beliefs.
Correct. And at the moment, they will be currently held beliefs. Yeah, we want to make them previously held beliefs. Yeah. And you can't get rid of a belief entirely. There'll always be some energy in it. So we got to gazump the energy with a bunch of new beliefs and energize them with more energy than the current beliefs that we have, which are not helping us do what we want to do. So where do these I know what will happens come from?
Analysis, noise, your broker, newsletters, a commentator,
it's
chat forums, social media posts, journalists, columnists, Any input outside your edge, which defines your flow.
So this is why it's so important to have it, and we've been through this in previous sessions about why it's so important to have a mechanical system, because you have to be able to define your edge in a way that doesn't give you any room, right? No wiggle room, is what Mark used to say, that gives you any excuse to be able to go outside of your edge. So that is why it's got to be mechanical. You've got to put the rules and put tight boundaries around this, so you can't give yourself any excuse or any ideas about going outside of your edge, because that is your self-sabotaging beliefs, your dysfunctional beliefs will pounce on that and go, right, we're allowed to do this because it's undefined. So this is why it has to be mechanical.
When working against you, your identity creates a kind of pride that encourages you to deny your weak spots and prevents you from truly growing.
Now this is James Clear. This is from Atomic Habits. So he's talking about how habits and beliefs, your identity is beliefs. Effectively, where you see James Clear talking about identity, he's talking about beliefs, because your identity is what you believe. And he makes that quite clear. We spoke about that in, I think, the first session. Your identity, it creates this pride. It attaches to it. It gives them pride as a positive energy. And what it does is it gets you to deny that you have any weak spots. I'm right. And the moment as Mark says, you don't consider other possibilities, then it prevents you from growing and becoming wiser. You get stuck where you are. What James Clear is saying is that habits and beliefs are good with respect to what you're trying to achieve. But if you have these habits and these beliefs and this identity that's not good with respect to what you're trying to achieve, then they actually work against you. And this is what we got to do, is identify the ones that work against us with respect to what we are trying to achieve in the market. Now, they may be functional beliefs with respect to something else that we do, but with the market, they're not.
So this is one of the greatest downsides of building habits. The more sacred an idea is to us, that is, the more deeply it's tied to our identity, the more strongly we will defend it against criticism.
And the we here is our beliefs. It's our identity, right? And the more deeply it is tied to identity is how much energy we give it, right? And the more energy we get it, so every time we do something that is dysfunctional with respect to what we're trying to achieve, we're just giving it more energy. We're enforcing it. So if we have a set of rules that define our boundary for buying or selling, every time we don't do that, we are just enforcing our current dysfunctional beliefs. And we are keeping the energy in them rather than taking the energy out of them to try and deactivate them. And this is now really what Mark is saying is supported by what James Clear is saying with his work in science and that sort of thing. Yeah. So dysfunctional beliefs.
I am a very good technical analyst.
Because then I'm going to be right.
Well, that's it. I know about the future. I know these patterns.
That's going to happen.
My broker or newsletter is good at picking stocks.
So this is you saying this. If you find yourself saying this when you're in this exercise and we're now trying to energize new beliefs and de-energize existing dysfunctional beliefs, and you are saying these things, you are giving your current beliefs energy. You're continuing to energize them.
The chat forums are great for stock tips. I'm terrible at knowing when to sell.
Terrible at putting. My forehand cross court is terrible. All you're doing is energizing a current dysfunctional belief with what you're trying to do in the environment in which you're executing, right? So stop yourself saying that stuff. Yeah. And how many times have you said, I'm horrible at, I'm terrible at, I'm no good at? Don't do it. If you in the environment in which you're operating, stop saying that. Turn it around, flip it around and say, I'm a good putter. My drop shots are great at the net.
The market's stacked towards rich people and it isn't fair.
I've heard people say that. Isn't fair.
Yeah, it isn't fair. And who says that? Is it the rich people or the poor people?
Yeah, well, I think they all say no matter where you are relative on the scale, there's always somebody who's richer.
I wait for the markets to rise before buying again. I've heard that so many times. I'm just going to sit and wait and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll know when to get back in.
That's it. I'm bad at remembering to check for sell signals.
Well, just change that. Just step into a process and stop saying that. Don't give yourself license to carry on doing this action, which is not functional with what you respect.
It's almost acknowledging that I'm bad at something, so therefore
I can keep doing it.
I can keep doing it.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll know when to get out when the time comes.
Plenty of times.
I'm horrible at statistics and probabilities.
Therefore, I can't trade a mechanical edge. I'm better at just being subjective and being a random dabbler. Yeah.
The stock market is for gamblers.
Do that plenty of times.
I'm set in my ways.
I can't change. No, I'm so set in my ways. I've been on the planet a long time and therefore I can't change. Yeah. As long as we have a brain, we can change. We don't have to be that set in our ways. We're just giving ourselves an excuse to not put in some effort, to work on ourselves and not improve ourselves and not develop and get better.
I'm set in my ways really means I don't want to change my ways.
I don't want to change my ways, but I also don't want to put up with the outcomes I'm getting.
Yeah.
So at some stage, the people who do get around to do something, the pain eventually becomes so much that they either take themselves out of the infinite game or they do something about it, and that creates a desire. So just beliefs create closed loops, and Mark talked about this. He talks a bit about it in the book, but he talks more about it in the workshop. And so here we have environment, a force via information coming at us. It hits our beliefs. Our beliefs then perceive the information, so it interprets it and then sets an expectation of what this information is going to do. Remember, James Clear talks about this expectation is automatically looking for a reward. So our minds are at every nanosecond of the day expecting or predicting and finding rewards into the future. So we set this expectation, which is going to default to be a reward. And then we make a decision to do or not do something, and you actually do it. And then you get an outcome, and then you get a feeling about the outcome. And that feeling, if the experience is not what happens, but is what we perceive that happens. So we could get, one person can get a really good outcome that's exactly the same as the outcome that somebody else gets, but that person perceives that outcome to not be good. And then whatever that perception is what then energizes the current belief that we have, energy to it or detracts energy from it. And so the loop keeps on going all the time. Everything we're doing, we got this. Our beliefs are getting energized or de-energized with every waking minute. And we got to choose what we want to energize the current beliefs with or de-energize them. So understand that that's that closed loop.
So understanding the trading exercise itself is easy. Understanding how to use the exercise to change your beliefs is another matter entirely. If you do the exercise without understanding the concepts presented in this chapter and the next, you will not achieve the desired results.
So this is chapter 9 and chapter 10 Mark's talking about here. And he uses the free money exercise, and he uses the boy bitten by the dog. And he goes through the scenarios that could be going through the boy's mind, and also the people that are seeing this free money thing, the free money board. He pulls them apart and he unpacks them. And you should read chapters 9 and particularly chapter 10 more than once. It does your homework from this session, but when you've gone through all of the sessions in this training intensive, go back and read that. And I know customers that have been on this journey for going back all the way to 2004 who've read Trading the Zone over 10 times.
So just here, Gary, when you're talking about the trading exercise, what are you talking about?
That's the mechanical exercise. That's the exercise that's in the back of the book, which we've spoken about a number of times. The skills acquisition plan that we've got, that we went through in detail in the previous session. And we're going to finish up just highlighting that mission again in session 8. But that's what we're talking about, the skills acquisition plan and completing that in lots of 20 or 25 trades, but also to go through 2 drawdown periods. So it's a defined boundary, finite exercise, finite game to acquire skills, right? And to do exactly what we're talking about here, to de-energize dysfunctional beliefs and to energize new functional beliefs with respect to this environment, this fantastic environment of the stock market that we all wanting to operate in. And we want to operate it in a way that we are consistently successful and peaceful through all market conditions.
Yeah, and that's important, because I think there what you've just done is you've captured the boundaries in which we're going to be operating in. And I think that's important, because a lot of members probably listening to this are perhaps still trying to position it all and contextualize it. But I think working on the skills acquisition plan, trading your way through several drawdowns of 10% or greater, and doing the 25 trades exercise many, many times. And whilst we're going through this, there's those broader objectives behind it to become a peaceful, active investor in all market conditions.
Absolutely. And it's the skills. This is all about acquiring skills. It's your net practice to do that first. But what we're going through here today with beliefs, and we've touched on it in previous sessions before, was also coming to a realization that it is my beliefs I've got to work with. Yeah. Otherwise, you're not going to do this exercise exactly how Mark is talking about here, is you have to understand these concepts of working with beliefs. And for, I'd say, the great majority of people that are seeing this material for the first time, if you haven't read Trading in the Zone before, your current beliefs are going to defend themselves, right? Yeah. They're going to defend and express themselves by saying, hey, what Dave and Gary are talking about here is just, which is what happened, as I said in the previous session, what happened to me the first time, right? My current beliefs then rejected this information because they were defending themselves and they wanted to express themselves. And the degree to which you are rejecting the need to do this and the need to work with your beliefs right now, as you're hearing what we say, is the degree to which your current dysfunctional beliefs are defending themselves. And all they're going to do, if you don't take on this exercise. And it's not hard once you start it and you understand these concepts, as Mark talks about, to actually get into it. And we can reframe this to make it fun and enjoyable. And we'll talk a bit about that in the last session.
So install the 5 fundamental truths. Do the trading exercise, so the skills acquisition plan.
Yeah.
Yep. Believe anything can happen, and my expectations about the market are fulfilled every time.
Now, that's Mark said that, and I took notes in the workshop. If you believe anything can happen, then your expectations will always be fulfilled.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
So you don't have to, you'll be right.
Yeah.
So you're redefining how you think, right?
Yeah.
Anything means everything.
We are at the unconscious mercy of the beliefs that were instilled in us without conscious consent.
So Mark spent a lot of time talking about most of our beliefs were put there by the people. When we were younger, going through life, going through formative years, going through education, all sorts of things. And we didn't sit there and decide whether we wanted that belief or not. It got imposed on us and without our conscious consent. And we're at the unconscious mercy of this because a lot of these beliefs have been energized by being told and whatever and learned and read stuff. And they're just sitting there. And we don't know the degree to which those beliefs are dysfunctional with respect to what we're trying to achieve. What do we believe about money? What do we believe about wealth? All of those things come into this equation. How much self-worth do we believe we have in this particular role that we play in our lives compared to play a whole bunch of other roles in terms of being parent and son and all that sort of stuff. But all of those self-worth beliefs are playing. They're having a role to play in the background without us being consciously aware of them in how we execute in the market. Yeah. So we could be self-sabotaging ourselves without knowing it. Yeah. Now, we're going to give you an exercise to maybe go and identify those, but just by focusing on the new beliefs, they will, and these are the 5 fundamental truths and the 7 principles of consistency, you will automatically de-energize those without having to go and do the work to find out what they are. Because by executing mechanically and achieving the 5 fundamental truths, you're automatically de-energizing these unconscious beliefs that we're at the mercy of, that we're put there without our conscious consent. Yeah. They'll automatically be happening. They'll automatically get de-energized.
When we reconcile the dysfunctional beliefs, we de-energize and deactivate them.
That's right. And we do that by talking about the exercise, but certainly by energizing the new beliefs and repeating them and doing them and acting them in a series of events, which is the 5 fundamental truths.
In light of what you now understand about the nature of beliefs, if you are still experiencing negative states of mind when you trade,
this is quite key.
You can assume there's a conflict between what about probable outcomes and any number of other beliefs in your mental environment that are arguing, demanding expression for something else.
So you might at the conscious level go, yeah, okay, I understand the 5 fundamental truths, I'm aware of them, and you'll say, I believe in them. And we spoke in a previous session about giving it lip service, but we think we believe in them. But the degree to which you really do believe in them and accept them will be the degree to how you feel about getting outcomes, the 4 primal fears, which is losing, leaving money on the table, being wrong, and missing out. And if you're feeling discomfort about any of those situations happening, then you don't really know about the probable outcomes. You don't really believe at a fundamental level, at the level that you need to be able to function in this environment, that you should believe in them, right? So there'll be some other beliefs that are arguing and demanding expression that you have to really deactivate. And we may or may not know what they are, but we don't really need to know what they are. We can just focus on energizing the beliefs that we need to have.
Keep in mind that all active beliefs demand expression, even if we don't want them. Think in probabilities, you have to believe that every moment in the market is unique, or more specifically, that every edge has a unique outcome.
So that's the micro level. Every trade you do has a unique outcome and anything can happen. And that's how you're thinking in probabilities.
So techniques for neutralizing beliefs and installing new beliefs. The Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, examples of neutralized or collapsed beliefs. Okay,
so that's an example that Mark talks about. And the Santa Claus one, he goes through about, picture yourself as a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old. One of your parents say to you, Santa Claus is at the door. You're not going to sit there and go, no, he's not. He doesn't exist. You will spring out of there, massive amount of positive energy, sprint to the door, and you will totally believe there's a man in a red suit there and he gives you a present. It's just going to energize that belief of, Santa Claus is real, right? But now all of us who went through that and had the Santa Claus experience, the belief is still there. It's just that it's de-energized and it's been deactivated. but it's sitting in our head. If it wasn't, then we wouldn't even know who Santa Claus is. You would go, who's he? Just be nothing in your head about Santa Claus. That's an example that you can neutralize and collapse beliefs, right? And deactivate them. So there's a number of steps over here to install. So Mark talks about you've got to genuinely make up your mind to be different and change. And what we're trying to do in this material is take you through a number of sources of information, if you like, to hit your senses for you to energize enough of your whatever beliefs you have to overcome the currently dysfunctional beliefs that will be defending themselves and expressing themselves. Say, hey, I don't need to do this, to get you to a point where at least your cognitive mind says, hey, I need to do this process. I need to stick with this process. Why? Because I genuinely want to be different. I genuinely want to change outcomes and how I feel about playing this infinite game and enjoying it rather than having all these negative feelings about it all the time. Whenever it does what it's always going to do is have retracements. So you create a step-by-step process.
Identify and neutralize conflicting beliefs. So any belief that creates discomfort. So you talked about
that's right. So to really be at peace, you should have no discomfort at all with anything you do in the market. Then you've arrived.
So install new beliefs. We need to define the new beliefs,
which are the 5 fundamental truths and the 7 principles of consistency.
So step into the process of the thoughts, feelings, sayings, and doings.
And that's the awareness and the journaling. So we spoke about the journaling and the skills acquisition plan. That should be part of your investment plan right throughout as well. Yeah. So the second one. So first one is, I'm going to do this. Make a decision and you're going to do this, right? Second,
desired and focused intent to change is the key. Yeah. So I am attracted to the benefit.
You could almost use these as affirmations, if you like, short little affirmations, right? So you know what the benefits are. I'm attracted to them. I want to do this.
My desire generates energy to move to state.
And that state is the states of mind that we spoke about with respect to the market. You want to be feeling the states of mind that were in the left-hand side of the column and learn how to flip into those states of mind.
Yeah. So my desire draws energy out of a belief that you don't believe is true.
Correct. So we're doing that. So we're energizing you. We're moving towards an energy that moves us towards a state of mind, and we want to take out of other states of mind, right? Yeah, and which we currently believe are true. De-energize it.
So self-discipline. I pay attention and be conscious of thinking, saying, doing, and feeling things in conflict with my objective.
Whenever I start thinking about not doing a trade, hesitating, putting in more money, not putting in enough money, getting out of a trade that I shouldn't get out of, getting into one that I shouldn't, all of those different things, is you catch it, you become aware of it, right? And what you're thinking, and then you may even still be doing those things. Now we've got to say, no, I'm not doing it. I've just got to execute my mechanical process. And you've got to be, so this is the awareness, right? And then doing something about it.
Yeah. The mere awareness of my conflicting belief will de-energize it.
So that awareness and catching it, and then journaling and writing it down helps you de-energize it.
Yeah. Is this who I am? Is this who I want to be?
Ask yourself those questions all the time. Every time you catch yourself doing something you shouldn't do according to your process, which is why we need to have a well-defined process, wiggle room. Otherwise, is this who I am with respect to trading? If there's subjectivity or there's confusion about who I want to be as a trader, then of course you can justify continuing to do the wrong thing and continuing to reinforce the dysfunctional habits.
I observe myself, what I should and shouldn't be doing instead of unconsciously reacting.
Okay, so that's the self-discipline. You're catching yourself in the moment and you observe, and rather than just unconsciously doing all of those trading errors that we spoke about earlier.
So being wrong. My success will come from a large sample of trades.
So whenever you feeling like you're gonna make a mistake because you might be wrong, you just say these little affirmations to yourself.
Trading is not a right or wrong game. I am committed to staying focused on the skills I am acquiring. I don't need to know what will happen next.
That's a powerful one, which is basically fundamental truth number 2.
Losing money. Lost trades and drawdown will occur as a natural expression of how the markets move.
That's a new belief. Now you're starting to energize a new way of thinking about the markets.
A lost trades and drawdown is not losing. It is an associated cost with trading that I'm willing to spend to get what I want over the long term.
And that's more or less come straight out of the workbook. Yeah.
So missing out. The market is a never-ending stream of opportunities in multiple timeframes, so there will always be another trade.
So you're not missing out.
Yeah. My method will ensure I achieve around 80 to 85% exposure of my money through all market conditions over the long term.
So you're stepping back big picture and longer term rather than, and you're seeing operating at the macro level rather than the micro level.
Yeah. Leaving money on the table. I don't leave money on the table in the time frame that I trade, as my edge has defined the precise criteria when to take profits for trades that average around 11 to 12 weeks on average.
That's obviously the SPA3 investor edge with medium to long-term trading in equities, but you could put whatever, the 11 to 12 weeks if you have another mechanical process or another satellite system that you trade. So it could be either of those. But the idea is that you've got these handled, right? Your edge takes care of all of these 4 primary fears, risks, whatever you want to call them.
The first stage is the mechanical stage. In this stage, you build the self-trust necessary to operate in an unlimited environment. Learn to flawlessly execute a trading system. Train your mind to think in probabilities, so the 5 fundamental truths. Create a strong, unshakable belief in your consistency as a trader.
This comes out of chapter 11, and this is just before Mark defines the trading exercise. So this is what we're doing. And you can't flawlessly execute subjective criteria, because how do you know that you're executing it flawlessly, right? You can only execute something flawlessly that's very well defined, is unambiguous, and there's no wiggle room. And we have to be able to do that. Otherwise, we leave room for us to make excuses to not do something. And that not doing something, if it's not well defined, well, then you're not doing anything wrong. So not following the process is not a wrong thing to do. So the right and the wrong has to be process orientated. If you don't follow the process, then you're doing the wrong thing. And what is consistency? Consistency is doing the process right over and over again. So that's what we've got to try and achieve, to be consistent.
It doesn't even occur to you to do something other than what your mechanical system says you should.
So this will help you install the 5 fundamental truths and the skills acquisition plan. So hopefully, we've absolutely smashed this to death about needing to and having to trade a mechanical system with defined boundaries over defined lots of trades and drawdown periods, 2 drawdown periods for you to acquire these skills. How do you acquire these mental skills? Well, you deactivate and de-energize a bunch of dysfunctional beliefs, and you energize a bunch of new fundamental beliefs, or new beliefs, new fundamental truths.